glad to be here with you today. Honored to be one of the B's on the BP leadership. So excited to be with you. And it's always fun for me to be in a room full of people that want to grow. And here's one of the ways I know you want to grow. You wouldn't be here this early if you didn't want to grow. And I was reminded of that when the alarm clock went off at 5 o'clock this morning. I said, wow, okay, hopefully there'll be some people there that they're as excited as me. And so today when Dad asked me to cover this about 6 months ago. It's their 41st anniversary, which is a big deal to be married to Dad for 41 years. Be praying for my mother. And I said, yeah, I'll cover that because I don't think that's a smart idea for you to miss your anniversary to teach a leadership lesson. That would be a lot of cold, long nights for you. And so I'll gladly be able to do that. And so I quickly began to wonder about 6 months ago, okay, how do I add the most value to you guys? How do I bring something to you that adds the most value? And what am I currently learning in our organization and studying? And there's something I've been studying for about 2 years that I want to share with you. And I want to be quite frank, we're not there yet. And this is a certain topic that I'm going to be honest, I don't think I'll ever get there. It's one of these where the standard just keeps moving. The closer you get to it, it keeps moving. And but we are making some big improvements and leaps and bounds at the church. I want to talk to you for just a few moments on creating a culture of excellence. Creating a culture of excellence. You know what a culture is this. The culture is kind of the spirit of the organization. It's the attitude of the organization. It really is the spoken and unspoken rules in which the organization operates by. And so everybody has a culture. Most cultures are cultures of mediocrity, not of excellence. I think really quickly, one easy example to kind of paint the picture would be if you go to a restaurant, let's say a fast food restaurant, I'm not picking on anybody, but let's say you go to anything other than Chick-fil-A. You know what you're going to find? You're going to find something that is not excellent. Every once in a while, you may see them do something good, but you're going to, pull up and put your order in, and if they, you don't expect anything. Put your order in, you know what you expect? You expect for them to say, pull up to the next window. Now, you go to Chick-fil-A, you know what you expect? For them to say, my pleasure. And if they don't, you begin to think, is something wrong with them? Are they okay? Are they all right? Do I need to ask if she's all right? Has someone died in her family? I mean, you're going to begin to wonder this because they have a culture of excellence. You also will pull up to one of these other places, and if they had 5 people in line, you could wait an hour and a half. But you don't expect anything else because, this mediocrity. But you could pull up to Chick-fil-A, and there could be 497 people in the deal, and you still have the confidence that you're going to get in and out of there within 5 minutes. Why? Because they've created a culture of excellence. And I believe as business owners, that is something that we should strive to. I believe as mothers in our home, we should strive for excellence. It's the determining factor between just average and great. I read about recently the CEO of Ritz-Carlton, and I love studying business owners, and they obviously have a culture of excellence. There's a big difference between a Holiday Inn and a Ritz-Carlton. Nothing wrong with a Holiday Inn, but you're not going to take your anniversary trip, to the Holiday Inn. And they were talking about how they created this culture of excellence. And they had it down so good to where they saw this particular customer that he had I think he was spending 3 nights there. And on the first night, the maid noticed that he took the nuts out of the complimentary free cookies and threw them in the trash can. Now, this is their eye for excellence. The next morning, they come in there, and there's a whole fresh stack of cookies there, all chocolate chip, with a note that said, we noticed that you threw the nuts away last night, so we baked you some fresh ones. We hope you have a wonderful stay at the Ritz-Carlton. And I mean, think about just that level of excellence. They even noticed this, that he slept on the left side of the bed, not the right. And so when he was going out, working out, or going to his business deal, they took the entire bed stand, the lamp and everything, and slid it over to the left side, the phone and everything, in case in the middle of the night he needed to take a note or needed to make a phone call. That's a big difference between a Holiday Inn service and a service at a Ritz-Carlton. What do they have? They have a culture of excellence. And that's what you and I ought to strive for in our business. And I want to teach you how you do that today. And so just about 8 principles that we can share with each other on how to create a culture of excellence. Number 1 is this. You got to know, or before number 1, you got to know this. You got to know that your culture is always moving. I want you to understand something. It's always moving. Your culture is always drifting. It's drifting away from your ideal or drifting towards your ideal, but your culture is always drifting. And every place has a culture, every home, every environment. The first thing that we must know that shapes our culture more than anything is the leader. The leader shapes the culture. See, your culture is going to pick up the values of the leader. If the leader values, the place being clean, guess what? The people value that. If the leader values being prompt and on time, then your organization will do that. It's the oldest management principle in the world is that monkey see, monkey do. If they see the leader values this, then this is what we're going to do. And this is why this is so important. It's important because the greatest determining factor of your culture is you. Nothing influences the culture more than you do. And nothing can grow beyond the level of the leader. That's what you're doing right here today was so important. Now, the second thing that shapes a culture of excellence is this. It's shaped by the team. It's shaped by your team. Do you have a team that you actually believe in? Do they want to be their best? I got to spend some time with Coach Pat Dye of Auburn, and we went quail hunting, and we got to spend a couple hours. We used to go on an annual trip up there, and so I always came with questions. And I asked him, I said, Coach, how do you build a winning team? He said, you have to have a team that truly desires to be the best. They don't want to be average. They don't want to be good. They want to be the best. And he said, when you can find a team that want to be their best, that's how you can win championships. Coach John Wooden, when you look throughout his books and his principles on leadership, he had a fascinating principle on leadership. He said he didn't need star players. He said, one or two would work, but what he needed to win championships is he needed to bring the best out of every single team member. He said, I'm talking about if this guy's a 4, and that's not great, a 4. If he's a 4, but he can be a 6, then my job as the leader is to get this 4 to perform and be a 6. He said if he's a 7 and he's got potential to be an 8, then how do I get him to become an 8? And he said whether we've got teams of 4s or 5s or a couple of 10s, when they're their personal best, and that's the job as the leader, that's when we win championships. And I remember when he said that, it stuck with me. You've probably heard about the Chick-fil-A example. You remember at one time they had a competitor, the Boston Market. And Boston Market had a goal of creating $1 billion in sales, and they were just growing in leaps and bounds. And there's an article about what the owner of Chick-fil-A at that time did, Truett Cathy. They were in a board meeting with all the people, and they were talking about how do we get bigger, how do we get bigger, how do we get bigger? And finally, totally out of form and fashion for him, he slammed his hands on the table and he said the famous quote. He said, let's stop talking about getting bigger. Let's talk about how do we get better. And in getting better, the people will demand that we get bigger. And that's what it is. It's looking around and saying, hey, do I have a team that thrives, that wants to get better? Do I have a team that says, how can we as an organization get better? And that makes the biggest difference. Now, number 3 is this. Do you have a culture that has clearly defined values? Clearly defined values. Every one of us talk a lot about vision and mission. I'll share with you our mission. Our mission at the church is this. It's to make fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ out of irreligious people. That's our mission. We're not, really about church hopping or this or that. We want that person that doesn't know God, that irreligious person, to find God. And we want to make them a fully devoted follower of Christ. Now, that's our mission, but our values are what gets us towards our mission. See, our mission and your mission is your why. It's why I'm in business. Why am I doing this? But your values is how you do that. It's how you get your mission. Our values, we've got a couple of different values that we put any and everywhere. We have them clearly defined. We have what's called internal keys and external keys. Our internal values and external values look like this. Here's our internal ones. So this is our staff and our volunteer. I'm just using this as an example. One of our values is this, is this appealing to the lost? This is our number one value. Is what we're about to do, does this appeal to the lost people? Does this appeal to non-church goers? And we ask this question before we make every single decision. Then we ask a couple more. Is this the most efficient way to do it? Is this intentional about their next step? Are we continuing to equip people? Those are our values. Your values will look different, but our external ones are this. Like this is where we put them everywhere. We want them to know God. We want them to get baptized. The second one is we want them to bring them into a new members deal and tell them all about the church and tell them how they can grow in their relationship with God. We want them to get in a small group. We want them to serve. And those values are everywhere. I mean, they're all over the organization. And we have them on our, we see them on our staff's iPhones. We see them on the walls. We see them in the bathroom. We see them we do this so that our organization sees, okay, these are clearly defined values, and this is how we operate. Let me tell you how much, and by the way, you tell your values over and over and over. There's a saying that vision leaks, but values leak as well. If you're not sharing them over and over and over, values leak as well. And so we repeat them over and over and over and over until you probably get sick of it as a church member of hearing, okay, here's your next step, here's your next step. Yesterday I heard something that said, there we go, we drove that deep. We had I don't know if you got a picture of him or not, but we've got a kid that's 8 years old. His name is Bo. Little Bo's here in the green hat. Bo hears every week at church, oh, the first step is they give their life to God. The next step is baptism. Bo is an 8-year-old. His friend comes to church with him, gives his life to God. Bo immediately says, you know what your next step is? It's to get baptized. Now, when you can drive your values so deep that an 8-year-old boy knows what the next step is, you've done something, okay? That's what you want. You want your organization, you want your staff to know this is our vision, but this is how we do it. This is our values. And we make every single decision through that set of values. Dabo Sweeney, the coach of Clemson, I was listening to a podcast the other day with him. If you haven't listened to his podcast lately, what was the guy's name, Trey, that he did it with? Was it Milet? Ed Milet. It was one of the best podcasts I've listened to all year long. And he began to talk about this. He said, we start over every year. He said, we have values and we have a book, a leadership book. He said, and my principle is I start over every year. So every year we're rebuilding and we say, here's our values. Here's why we do what we do. And he said, every year we pretend like this is the first year we've ever in business. And look how many championships they've won and how many games they've won. Dave Ramsey, they said they get sick of what he does every month. Every month he starts over and he sits down at the table that him and his wife went bankrupt at. And they bring the table in there to the staff and he says, let me tell you the story. Here was the table where I couldn't pay the bills. Here's the table where I was bankrupt, where I had $1 million. And they said that people that have been on staff a while, they're like, oh God, here comes the table story. But he said there's 50 new hires that don't know. And I've got to buy them in. If you don't know your history, you don't know why we're doing this. And he's sharing that. You cannot share your values enough. You share them over and over and over, and you have them visual. Now, the fourth thing is this. You got to know your values and have clearly defined values, but you've got to be intentional by leading by those values. You have to lead by the values. If you don't lead by the values, they're just a picture on the wall or in the bathroom, and they don't mean jack squat. You got to lead by them, and the leader has to see that we make decisions, and the people have to see that we make decisions by our values. It's one thing to know them, but you got to lead by them. Coming back to that Dabo Sweeney example, the coach of Clemson, he's taken this place from, man, they were just a losing team, let's be honest. I like Clemson. My relatives swam at Clemson, but they were not a great football team, okay? Now you look at Clemson, and it's always almost Clemson and Alabama that's going to win the national championships, right? And he's won them 10 games per year for almost a decade. It's insane. And he said this. He said, here was our value. We wanted to do something. We wanted to do the common in an uncommon way. Just the common stuff, whether it's cleaning the locker room, cleaning the floors, tying our shoes a certain way. We want to do something, the common thing in an uncommon way. And he said, and if we do the common things in an uncommon way with enough excellence, eventually the world will take notice. Now, his big thing was this. We cleaned the locker room. So he said they went and they played Notre Dame and they lost. And he said they lost. Usually you trash the locker room, not them. We have a culture of excellence. We do the common in an uncommon way. They make this locker room spotless. He said one of the greatest achievements he got was not the 2 national championships, not the 10-game winning streak. He said, I got a letter from the coach of the people that we got beat by that said, never in my life have we beat a team and came in and seen the locker room so clean. You could eat off the floor in that place. Thank you. I don't know what you're doing at Clemson to teach these kids this, but this is unbelievable. He said, I kept this letter. You know why? Because we do common things in an uncommon way so much that the world will take notice. That's a culture of excellence, isn't it? That's the guy that says, I want this perfect. And what he's done is he's created something that's just magnificent off of that. We've got to lead by our values. We do this here at the staff. When I showed you our showed you our values. We make every decision by that. We try to make every decision by the values. And one of ours is this appealing to the lost? Are they serving? And I remember when we led through the COVID thing, there was a lot of pressure on me. Do you start back now? Do you go early? Do you do that? And we started during this weird time, about 6 months of being closed for the physical facility. We started to have people, we're ready to go back to church. We're going to leave and go to another church if you don't open back up. You had this pressure making this decision. And they said, Brent, you need to make this decision by Friday. They had a camera crew here. You announce what we're going to do and what's the next step. And so I just quickly prayed and said, God, I don't know if I'm making the right decision or not. I don't have peace about just opening up. I know it's going to take twice as many volunteers. And I look back and I remember I got into a side room and said, God, you got to show me what I do. And it just came to me that quick. And I thought, wow, I know it's the Holy Spirit that told me this. But I began to look at those values, and I'm in this room praying. I said, God, before I walk out there, help me to make the right thing. And I see our values on the wall. And our first value is this appealing to the lost. And then I look at number 4, and it says, are we serving? Are we equipping those people to serve? And I look at it, before I make this big decision, why don't I look at our values? And I thought, how appealing is it going to be if I let this pressure allow me to make a decision, and we show up, and 1,000 people show up, and there's no nursery workers. And 1,000 people show up, and there's not enough people to accommodate in the parking lot. And 1,000 people show up, and it's just utter chaos. How appealing is that? And immediately I thought, well, that answers my decision. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something that I haven't seen any other church in America do, but it's going to raise the standard, but it's leading by our values. So I got in front of the camera, and they were waiting for me to just, release the date. I said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to open up the facility for you to enjoy the live worship service. We know you've missed it, and we can't wait to see you. But you are welcome to enjoy the live services for a few weeks, and if you join our team, and if you volunteer, and if you pick up a job, we will open up to the masses. And if you come and you do something, then when we open up to the masses, we'll be ready. We'll have hundreds of people. Well, the only kickback I got was from lazy people that wanted to be consumers, not contributors. They said, oh, this church is making you do. Did you hear that church? They won't even open up the house of God till they make you do something. You got to serve to be a part of that church. Open your Bible. Jesus came and served. He said, Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. So we want to be like Jesus. So we're going to open up. And if you serve, because it's not about us, it's about other people, then we'll open the church up. We immediately had 800 volunteers. We doubled our volunteers in 1 week. And we opened up to the masses, and it's been wonderful. And when people came on to the property, guess what? Organized. You park here. You wash your hands here. We temperature check here. We do all this stuff. We had plenty of people. And let me tell you, when they came on, and it was very fearful, and they were scared. Is it going to be safe? Is it not? Because this is a big deal, getting with people during that phase. They said, man, this place has got it going on. This place is clean. This place has hundreds of people, cleaning the building and wiping door handles and all kind of stuff. Is that appealing to the lost? Oh, you bet you it is. You bet you it is. You see, it's one thing to have values, but you must lead by your values, or the values are not your values. And your values are always going to cost you something. See, that cost me something. It was a tough decision. Do I say, the crowd wants me to do this? Or do I say, this is my values and I'm sticking with it? But when you do, the payoff is so much better. And so you've got to lead by this. You got to look at it and say, okay, is this how we're going to do it according to our values? Now, the fifth thing is this. The fifth thing is language shapes culture. Language shapes culture from the leader and from the team. Do you have a language in your organization, your home, that is scarcity or abundance? We can do this. We're going to find a way. We may not have the resources, but we've got resourcefulness. We're going to figure this out. Or is it, we can't make it? I don't know if we can do that. Do you have can-do people around you or can't-do people around you? Some of the worst, I'll vent for a minute. One of the worst people in the world to have on your team is people that can't do that mentalities. You know what I mean? Like you just want to dream what could be, what should be. How can we make this the best? And you got people, you have to do this. I don't know if you can do that. I kick people out of my meetings like that. They're not allowed. We recently did something. We went through the Patrick Lencioni, and I would encourage this. It's called the 6 Working Geniuses. And I took all the staff through it. I wanted to see their hardwiring, see how they think. And I wanted to make sure I had the right people in my meetings. I didn't want dream killers in my meetings. And so here's some of the 6 working genius. There's 6 different types of people. And if you can figure these out, this is how people work and their hardwiring. One of them was the genius of wonder. They see the potential. One of them was the genius of venture. And they see the ideas. Genius of discernment. They assess ideas. Galvanizing. They rally others together and say, hey, we could do this. Enablement. These are the people that say, hey, I'll help you. You need help there? I'll jump in. Tenacity is people that say, they just want to check it off. They're OCD, I just want to check it off. So who do you think, when I want to dream about what the church could be or what it should be, who do you think I have in the room? Only the first 2. I've got the people that want to see the potential, want to see that. And all these people from 3 down, they're kicked out of the room. They're not allowed. I don't want any language that's going to kill a dream. Now what's neat is the second meeting that we have, once we dream and we go, oh, this could be incredible, is I kick these people out of the room. I don't need them no more. I don't need you to wonder about what it could be, what it should be. We didn't figure that out. So you're not invited. Then I get people that's going to pick it apart, and they're going to say, how do we do this, and how do we do that, and that's what you do. But you cannot have the wrong language in the room. You cannot have people that say, you can't do that. It'll kill the culture. You've got to have language that goes with your values as well. I remember my former social media guy is here today, and he's so good at what he does that now as Media Mule, he has opened his own company. And he's so good at what he does that he took it up, and now he does it for small businesses. He's incredible. You got to check him out. But he will tell you, I drove him crazy on this. I made him put our values on his computer. I made him put it as a screensaver. And I said, don't you ever post anything that's not appealing to lost people. And he would use words like baptized sometimes or salvation. Those are churchy terms. I said, my market don't know what that is. And so we go back and change it. And it took months and months. And eventually we were just in sync. He would know it. He said, oh, now I was going to do that. But I said, hey, why didn't you post that? It wasn't appealing to lost people. Lost people don't care about that. And so this is why I did this. And it was wonderful. What were we doing? We were saying we want to lead by our value. We want to have language that expresses our values. This is kind of the same thing with even when I preach. If you ever notice, I'm not great at it every time, but I try not to say, Peter, a disciple of Jesus, did this. Because a person that don't go to church don't know the word disciple means, and now they don't know who Peter is. So I stop and say, Peter, a guy who actually left his job, a guy who actually found Jesus to be so intriguing that he left his job to say, I want to learn more about this. Peter, one of the closest friends, an eyewitness to Jesus, here's what he says in his document. Well, then you want to lean in because now you know Peter. I didn't leave you out. You want to look at the language of your organization and say, is this fluent with what my values are? Is this fluent with what my values are? Now, not only does language shape the culture, but there's an example that the Ritz-Carlton guy, the CEO, shared, and I thought, man, I got to share this with you. It's just amazing, and it makes you want to watch your language in your organization. He said this. He said, we instilled from the person washing dishes to the executives that here's what we value, and here's the language we're going to use. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's what he said. You know, you're not a dishwasher. You're a lady and gentleman serving a lady and gentleman. And he said, I knew this clicked when they, all the way from the top meetings down to the smallest little pocket of people, were ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. He said, I knew it stuck when one day I walked in, the CEO, and he walked into the back, and there was a dishwasher back there washing dishes. And he said, how are we doing today? What are we doing? He said, we're not washing dishes. And he said, so what are we doing? Because he said, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. He said, see, if he's just a dishwasher, if the spot was on there, he'd leave the spot. Big deal. But he's not just a dishwasher. He's a lady and gentleman serving another lady and gentleman, so he wants it perfect, clean. I thought, man, that is someone who's drove that language deep into the organization. We've done this on many different things. One of the things we did recently was, you ever heard the term, you probably have if you grew up in the South, a lot of churches on every corner, Vacation Bible School. Now, let me ask you which one's appealing when we talk about language that shapes our culture. I don't know about you, but a vacation has nothing to do with school. So first off, I'm like, my parents, had me addicted to something. I had a drug problem growing up. Seriously, I was drugged to church every time the doors were open. So none of these were appealing. A vacation shouldn't be with the word school, and I didn't want to come and learn the Bible my off time. But we did something. When we're talking about our values, is this appealing to the lost? We changed it a few years ago to Kids Week. Is that more appealing Of course. That's way more. And you know what we saw just by that one result and changing our language? It went from 250 people attending every year to 850 to 1,000 every year, just by that one language. Because you might have someone that's turned off by religion. You might have someone that says, I don't want to, that don't sound fun to me. But Kids Week, I mean, heck, that sounds fun. Drop my kid off, it's free. Go jump on the bouncy house. Yeah, go for it, right? Watch your language in your organization. Is it consistent with your values? Number 6 is this. It's our behaviors shape our values. And I want to dive into this for just a second. Our behaviors shape our values. Every environment, when we talk about culture, isn't it funny that every environment there's unspoken rules and you don't know if you've broken the rules or not until you break them? You know what I mean? You're like, you do something, the officer's like, hey, you can't do that. I didn't know. Where's it written down? Oh, you just can't. You can't do that. He's going to kill you. You know, there's unspoken rules in every single environment. That's your culture. And your behaviors. Now, as a leader, what creates a culture of excellence when we're talking about behaviors is what do you tolerate and what do you reward? The behaviors. What do you tolerate and what do you reward? As leaders, we cannot complain about what we tolerate. That's an empty complaint. You're the leader. We can't complain about what we tolerate. And I remember that one of the first times when Hunter mentioned me coming in as the CFO, I remember we had a culture where the stewardship just wasn't great. And so I came in to change it. So I had just 2 rules. I said, when you turn in purchase orders, they're going to be turned in at 12 o'clock, not 12:01, at 12 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, my secretary brought them back and she put them in my door box. Anything 12:01, wait till next week. You're not getting it. And I remember that was my value. And I had many times, you kidding me, it's 12:02, you can't, no, bring it back next week. What was I trying to do? I was trying to create a culture of excellence when it comes to stewardship. I remember one of the best employees we had, I had another rule that when you fill out a purchase order, you must have 3 quotes because I wanted it to be honest. I wanted to keep people honest and I wanted to be a good steward of the church. 3 quotes, not 1, not 2, 3. That's all I ask. Okay, just keeping everybody honest. The best employee that we had on the first week of the job wanted to test me on this. And he put 2 quotes and he spent I remember to this day, $831.22 on an item with 2 quotes. And so I would go to him, and I remember the board, I said, this is what I've done, and this is what I'm going to do. He's buying this. He's paying for this. I didn't buy that. He just bought that for himself. I said, no, Brent, you can't do that. He's the best guy that we have. If he leaves, we're all in trouble. You can't, if it was Bob, punish Bob, but don't punish this guy. We actually have a Bob that works for us. I'm not talking about him. Many of you are like, what? I'm just using hypothetical Bob. I said, well, this is what we're going to do because I want a culture of excellence. I want us to be excellent in our stewardship. I go to the guy, and he's the best employee. He literally is the best employee. I said, congratulations. He said, what do you mean for? I said, that piece of equipment that you bought for $831.22 is a nice piece of equipment. He said, I know. I said, you didn't give it 2 quotes. You now own this piece of equipment. Here you go. And it's coming out of your check this week. Well, he didn't like it, but let me ask you, did he ever do it again? Oh, no. One time. What was I doing? I wasn't trying to be a power trip. I was trying to say, this is the culture. See, what we tolerate, we cannot complain about what we tolerate. That's how you tolerate the behaviors in your organization shapes the culture. Now, not only what you tolerate, well, what do you reward? What do you reward in your organization? Your behavior is shaped by what you reward. There's an old management principle that says this: what gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Now, I'm a big advocate for this. I don't just reward people privately because I believe that causes addition to the culture. It's good, but we make one jump. I reward people privately and publicly. See, publicly, if I say, man, great job so-and-so did on this, what am I doing? I'm telling the whole staff, the whole organization, wow, this is what gets rewarded. When we play to this value, we get a pat on the back. And you multiply by doing that. You multiply that thing that you want done. And so your behaviors, what you reward and what you tolerate, they shape the culture. I tell you where this drives deep. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had our guy that oversees our first-time guest experiences. And we talked to him about number 1, it's got to be appealing to the lost. This guy pulls in and his car is squeaking very bad. And he's embarrassed. And he pulls in and it's making loud noises. And he pulls in and he said, I'm so embarrassed. I probably shouldn't have come to church today. And the guy said, no, we want you here. And he said, I don't have power steering fluid for my car, and it's loud, and I know this is a big place. And then he asked, this is bad, this is a rumor, but it is what it is. It's the lie that won't die. He said, I don't have to bring my W-2 to come to church today, do we? And our first-time guest said, of course not, man. That's just a lie. Come on in. We're glad to have you. While he's in church, my man that oversees this first-time guest experience drives out of his way, takes his own money, goes to Advance Auto, finds the year and the model of this guy's car, buys power steering fluid, comes back, puts power steering fluid beside his car, and writes him a note. Thank you for being at Cascade Hills this morning. We hope you had a wonderful experience. Now, let me ask you, that behavior that he just did that help us? Was that appealing to the lost? Do you think this guy's going to come and go, golly, do you think he's going to tell 5 of his buddies, if you ever go to church, you got to go to that church? Of course he is. Now, what did I do with that behavior? Did I come to him privately and go, man, good job. Wow, that was impressive. No. I'm telling all you guys about it. I stood up in front of all I said, let me tell you about this guy. Because I want to reward that behavior, because I want that behavior to be multiplied. Did I reward him privately? You betcha. I reward his bank account too. I reward those things because I want them to what? I want them to be repeated. And Disney World has this philosophy called make it magical. They say take 5. They empower every employee to take 5 minutes of their day, every day, and make something magical. That means if someone drops an ice cream cone, just take 5 minutes and go give them a new one. It's on us. What are they doing? They were empowering this behavior that they wanted repeated. One of the best ones I heard of is, there's 2 examples actually, if you don't mind me sharing this with you. One of them was with Disney. This kid lost, their grandmother hand-sewed them a teddy bear. Hand-sewed them. She lost it. And so they sent this thing to the Lost and Found. They said, we know you're meticulous with Lost and Found. Can you find it? They looked everywhere for 3 months and could not find that bear. They knew this was special. They said, would you send us a picture, another picture of this bear? So they sent him a picture of this bear. The CEO got the letter. He sent it to the head engineers and the head of Imagineering, and they recreated this doll that the grandmother had hand sewn and sent it to this little girl. Now, let me ask you, do you think they're coming back to Disney World? Yeah. You think they're going to spend some more money on the next vacation? You betcha. The Ritz-Carlton has one that I loved, and you business owners would appreciate this. They give, get this, a $2,000 allowance to every single employee to make it right. A $2,000, and when he pitched this to the board, they said, you're going to make us go bankrupt. We can't do it. And he said, no. No one will ever use all $2,000. They might have a cold meal, buy them a glass of wine. They might do this. Hey, the meal's on us. I think in the history, they've only spent like $400 out of that $2,000. But what did they do? They allowed them to have a behavior that's going to shape their culture. They empowered the employee. Now, the interesting thing is the guy did the stats. Did you know on average, the average Ritz-Carlton customer over a lifetime spends $250,000? Is it worth a glass of wine to make it right? You betcha it is. You betcha it's worth that $2,000 allowance. That behavior shapes your culture. Now, the 7th thing that shapes our culture is this, as we get ready to wrap it up, is stories shape your culture. Stories shape your culture. Every week, share a story because vision leads. You know, your vision for your organization, you know who your biggest competitor is? Softball. Softball, baseball, life, the 4-H club, all that stuff. And so you have to share stories of how you're making a difference over and over and over and over. Stories create morale within the organization. Stories bring validation and appreciation to your employees. Every week we do this, we call it huddles. We take 5 minutes. We say, hey, this is Victoria. Victoria, because you opened the door, because you cleaned the door handles, Victoria's a germ freak. And she walked in and gave her life to God, and you made a difference. Do you think that volunteer wants to come back next week? You bet you, because they just made a difference in Victoria's life. It's the same thing if you're in the fitness business. Hey, this woman was 30 pounds overweight. She put in the hard work with this trainer, and this week she's lost 5 pounds, and her self-esteem is through the roof. It's the same thing if you own a tire-changing business. Hey, this person couldn't afford their tires, but let me show you guys. Come here. Get all the employees around. You made a difference. We were able to put these tires on it, and this got her to work. She was able to put food on her family's table. When you give validation, you give appreciation, you boost the entire morale of the organization, every bit of it. Stories shape cultures. They do. There was a study years ago about And they wanted to prove this, that people want to know they're making a difference. More than money, they want to be validated, appreciated, and know they're making a difference. So they got this group and they paid them $15 an hour, a group of 20 of them, to dig a hole. And they said, yeah, dig a hole, $15, you got it. And they said, man, after the day they were exhausted. They said, hey, I made $15 an hour. The next day they said, okay, we want you to come back and we're going to pay you $20 an hour. And we want you to come over here and we want you to fill that hole back up and we want you to dig another hole right beside it. And they said, okay, easy money. They did this for the course of about 3 weeks, $30 an hour, $40 an hour. By the end, there was no one left. They quit. They said, I'm not coming just to dig a hole. I want to know I'm making a difference. I want it to be productive. It had nothing to do with money. When you share stories in your culture, what you're doing is you're shaping that culture of excellence. You're driving that deep. Your employees are going, wow, I am making a difference. I'm not just coming to get a paycheck or do what this guy says. I'm making a difference. And so stories shape your culture. They do. Now, the final thing is this. It's that mindset. I was looking at a point here that I was going to share. You know what? I'm going to share it if you got 2 seconds. When I talk about stories shaping cultures, there's a stat that shows us that 5% of stats stick. If you tell your employees a stat, 5% of them is going to stick. They'll remember. 65% of stories they'll remember. We try to do this when we share stories. We could say it this way. Hey, X amount of people gave their life to God. And hey, guess what? Someone from Africa watched this week and they gave their life to God. Or we could take that and milk that story and tell that story for what it's worth. We got a guy, he actually does live across the world. He found the church. He faces persecution. He walked over 2 miles to be baptized because you're not allowed to be baptized in that area. He's now started a life group, which is, again, our values. He's got 5, 6 people in his life group. He's risking his life, and he's across the world. This church has impacted him. Now, what do you think makes a difference? Me, if I say, hey, a guy from Africa watched this week. Or if I say, let me tell you about this guy and what he's doing and how God's changed this story. You'll remember that story. Now, the last thing, again, is mindset shapes culture. And this is just real quick. You have to have a team that has a mindset, and as a leader, have a mindset of how do we make it better? It's a very simple question, but how do we make it better? There's never a staff meeting that goes on that we have an entire portion of the staff meeting that we spend probably 30 minutes on, and we say, how do we make it better? Just the other week alone, I said I require every employee to bring 3 things that were excellent according to our values, and 3 things that were below par. And we have big old pair of glasses in the staff meeting, goofy but easy way to remember, and these have our values on them. And so what I tell them to do is on the weekends, you walk around, not physically with these on, but mentally with these on, and you look through and say, is this efficient? Is this appealing? Is this equipping people to do this? Am I moving people to my next step? And you walk around with that lens on, and then you bring in the staff meeting to the how do we make it better portion. You bring 3 things that were excellent according to the values and 3 things that stunk according to the values. Last week alone, just to use an example, we had 63 things brought to the table. Now, let me ask you, do you think we'll be better next week? You bet you. You got to have a mindset if you're going to shape a culture of excellence of every week, how do we make it better? You can only coast going downhill. So you want to say, how do we make it better? I hope that today this has added value to your life. I know we've run out of time here, and I don't want some of you to get fired and have to create a whole new culture of excellence. But I am honored and privileged to be with you, and I hope I've added value to your life. Thank you for allowing me to share today.
I hope you enjoyed this BP Leadership lesson from Bill Purvis. And if you would like to hear more from Bill, make sure you check out the BP Leadership Podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. So make sure that you subscribe to the BP Leadership Podcast today.